Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us at Politico's 2025 Security Summit and for the very exciting programming we have ahead. I'm very excited to be joined here by Senator Deb Fischer, who I know well from the hallways of the Capitol. She is the second most senior Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee, the chair of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee, which oversees nuclear weapons. And we have a lot to discuss, including the future of American defense spending, the recent skinny budget. I do want to start first with the news this week of President Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE. News of the day question, the president plans to or would like to accept the gift of a $400 million jet from the Qataris to serve as Air Force One. There's been some pushback from Democrats and some Republicans, and I wanted to ask you from as somebody who understands defense acquisition programs and is very steeped in it, whether this is a good deal for taxpayers or whether there's some better advice that the president could get.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I appreciate being here. Thank you, all of you who are here today for this important discussion. I think the president is looking at taking this plane. I'm looking at this gift from more of a policy and a budget viewpoint. As we all know, the plane would have to be completely redone inside so it could meet the needs of a president of the United States. So it would have to be gutted out. So I want to look at the cost of that and how that compares to just getting a new plane, but also the idea that it would be carried over then after President Trump's presidency for his library. How does that affect the taxpayer? Because obviously the next president is going to need a plane in Air Force One that has to be completely fitted out to meet the needs of a commander-in-chief.
Right, it's not necessarily a great deal for the taxpayer if they've paid for a jet that's going to sit in the presidential library versus having been getting to be used by a future president, especially if you think about the jets that are being used today, right? We've gotten several decades, presidents have gotten several decades out of the jets used today.
Yeah, we need to run the numbers so we know if this is a good decision for taxpayers.
Right. Can I ask you about the skinny budget? There was a promise of $1 trillion for the defense budget. It's something that Pete Hegseth and the president talked about. But when the budget was proposed, there was $892.6 billion in discretionary defense spending, and then the gap was made up by reconciliation funding, which I think some Republicans feel is not the way that they had wanted to go. I think they wanted to see $1 trillion in the base budget, and I want to know what you think about it.
On the Senate Armed Services Committee for the last 3 years of the previous administration, President Biden sent us a budget, and in a bipartisan way in the Senate, we've, for the most part, strong majority of the committee agreed that it was not enough, and so we added more to that Biden budget that was sent in order that we can continue to have a sustainable growth in a defense budget that can truly meet the threats that this country faces. I am not happy with the way OMB is trying to turn this. President Trump has said he wants peace through strength. In order to have peace through strength, we have to continue to have a defense budget that meets the needs of our military members, and to meet those growing threats that we see in this world. I think OMB was trying to do some smoke and mirrors. I know the secretary, when he early on said it was a $1 trillion budget, I contacted him and told him, you know, I'm with you on that. But reconciliation is not the extra little boost that they're trying to do here to boost that up to $1 trillion. So there are a number of us that would like to see a much more robust budget.
Can you forecast a little bit? What do you think we're going to see when Senate Armed Services Committee is considering its own top line? How much of a plus up might we get, and why?
You know, I said in the past 3 years we've done that. $25 billion is what we were looking at before. We just continue to see growing needs. In my subcommittee, we have jurisdiction, as you said, over our triad, over our deterrence. And we have big projects right now going on for that modernization. Sentinel is the largest public works project this country has seen since the interstate highway system. We have bombers that we need to get out. We have to look and make sure our next class of submarines are going to continue on schedule, and we're making changes to some of our weapons as well. So not just platforms, but the weapons. And then when you look at, again, the threats we have, you look into space and the opportunities, I don't consider everything a challenge. I consider things, opportunities that we have where we can make great strides in space. Well, in order to do that, we need to continue to have a budget that's going to grow. You know, we need more ships, more subs, more aircraft, more munitions. It's just, on and on and on. And I think the American public are realizing that. I've pushed, as you know, I always want to see as much material as possible be declassified. You know, we're in classified briefings all day, every day practically at this time of year. And I think if the American people have a better understanding of the threats to our national security that this country faces, we will see a growth in support for our military men and women, but also to provide them with the resources that they need to defend this country and complete their missions.
I want to get to a topic that you've been active on that I think folks might not know about, but I think that they really should, and that's spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. It sounds like heady stuff for this early in the morning, but I think what folks might not know about it is that it intersects with a couple of other major topics on the Hill right now, including reconciliation. There's a sticking point among Republicans on electromagnetic spectrum as it relates to the reconciliation bill. And it's also, there's some tension between whether to use it for the military or for commercial purposes. And I wanted to ask you, maybe we can tell me if I do okay explaining this, but basically spectrum is the radio waves that are used by military communications, missile defense systems, radar systems, and what's controversial about it is that there are House Republicans want to authorize some of that spectrum to be auctioned off in order to pay for this reconciliation mega bill, which has tax cuts and a number of other domestic priorities. But can you tell me why you disagree with that?
You did a pretty good job on that.
Okay, thanks.
And now I'm going to go off on my rant on spectrum. Spectrum is something I've been focused on for a number of years, along with my good friend and colleague, Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota. And spectrum is a finite resource that the government has. It's those electromagnetic bands. Each band is a little different and accommodates different assets, and it's extremely important for the Department of Defense to maintain their ownership and access of the lower 3, but also parts of 7 and 8. In classified briefings, but also in open hearings, if you're a fan of C-SPAN and watching all of this, or if you read Joe's materials that he puts out, we are hearing more and more often in a public setting from our combatant commanders. Stratfor Subcommittee, we have jurisdiction over STRATCOM and also Space Command. So you'll have General Whiting and you'll have General Cotton, you will have Missile Defense with General Collins. All will come out and stress the importance that those bands have for our national security because of the assets that are there. You cannot defend against what you cannot see. You have to be able to see it and identify it and kill it in missile defense to protect this country.
Can I just jump in because I want to ask you two things, and I see we're running out of time. One is, there are a number of other provisions in different areas that are sticking points for Senate Republicans. But do you think that the House bill, as written right now, is this a deal breaker for you on that bill?
I think it needed to go much further. I personally cannot accept it as it came out of the E&C committee. I'm also on the Commerce Committee, and that committee is looking at spectrum as well in having a pipeline established and also a spectrum auction. In the E&C bill, it put the pipeline in and somewhat defined it for the lower 3, but there's no definition for auction authority for the FCC. So they could go outside of that since they have the authority and be able to auction other bands, whether it's the lower 3 or 7 or 8. I believe in the Senate we must be able to have complete definitions on what bands DoD needs. And this is, again, for a number of radars, a number of sensors, and a number of assets I can't tell you about how important that is. When it comes to the idea that this is going to be the silver bullet for reconciliation, I disagree with that as well. We're looking at CBO coming out and saying, well, it will be $88 billion in revenue over 10 years. But yet that does not take into consideration, CBO did not look at what it would cost the Department of Defense to move assets, for example, for missile defense that the Navy has, which would cost approximately $250 billion. This is, I think, short-sighted, and the more senators are learning about it, and I think the House as well, will come to realize that this has to be defined very definitely in any reconciliation bill.
Can I ask you, so an argument that you've been making or that you've solicited from some combatant commanders is that Golden Dome, the missile defense, this massive missile defense shield cannot happen without the military's access to spectrum. Is that an argument that's gaining traction with House Republicans, professed allies of the president, or within the White House at all? Is that?
We've been working closely with the White House, and they have been very supportive, working closely with the Department of Defense. And every time a military commander is asked about Golden Dome and spectrum, the need for spectrum, they will bluntly say, as NORTHCOM combatant commander, NORAD commander, General Geo said just this week, it will not happen if the department loses access to the spectrum they have.
I'm just going to ask you one more on Golden Dome. When you asked General Geo about the concept, he said, I don't know what Golden Dome will look like. There's $25 billion in the next budget that's supposed to go to Golden Dome. Do we know enough about what this is? There's been some criticism from Democratic appropriators that this is more of a concept than an actual plan at this point.
In the last NDAA, there were a number of things that I pushed for that came out of the Strategic Posture Review, 81 recommendations from that commission that was formed. And one of those dealt with giving the department the authority to plan for, it wasn't Golden Dome at the time because this was a year ago, but to plan and look into having this system there. And that's where we are right now. The general, when he said that, I think was recognizing the technology that will be involved in forming the radars and the sensors and the ability to have that interconnectedness as well. But it is a concept. It is moving forward with the administration, and obviously it was something that I pushed to get in the NDA last year because I think it's extremely important for the missile defense that we need for our country to keep our homeland safe.
This has been very fascinating, and if it were up to me, this would keep going, but I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. I look forward to continuing this conversation in the hallways.
He's a stalker in the halls.
It's mostly true. We're going to have a quick stage change, and then House Armed Services Vice Chair Rob Whitman and Ranking Member Adam Smith are going to join Politico Bureau Chief Jonathan Martin to dive deeper into their defense spending priorities. Stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, very much.